Hey, what's going on? It's Cameron, and this is Profilus Plus, and we're talking about lights and shadows. And for this more advanced lesson today, I want to show you, well, I want to create like a really simple title sequence. And I saw something like this similar done, and I can't remember who did it, but it was inspiring to me when I instantly saw that. I love being inspired. You know, when I see something, if it immediately sticks out to me, if it immediately says, "Well," I say, "Wow!" Like that's inspiration to me, and I pull from that. So, what we're gonna do here is we're gonna do like a simple camera pull out of this guy, and we're gonna add some typography around him in 3D space, and we're gonna reveal like a final just title. It could be anything, but we'll probably just call it title. Um, and we'll, like I said, we'll add lights and shadows to make it more interesting. So we've learned how to work with type, how to work with um, texture, how to work with 3D cameras, and we're working with lights now. So we're building upon everything we've been learning so far. So I'm gonna turn down my music here. I've got some music playing, some M83. If you don't know M83, you gotta definitely check them out. This is an older song I'm listening to. So anyways, I've got a camera here, and I've got a man here, and this is something I pulled off. I don't know how you pronounce it, but it's PXHERE. I always call it sphere.com. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, but it's a Creative Commons image, so it's included in the project file. And I've just got a black solid here. That's just a 2D layer, so I'm gonna lock that. That's just my black solid. Sometimes I work with 100% black, sometimes I work with off black. It just depends. So we've got our guy, he's in 3D space. I've pushed him back here 1,000 pixels just to start, right? So if I brought him in at 0, this is where he'd be based on my camera. But I pushed him back 1,000 pixels, and I've got a camera here, and I'm just going to do like I'm going to set a keyframe here, and in my testing, title A, I'm not going to show you that. Whenever you see an A and B here on my timelines, that's because the A is usually my test, right? So I do a lot of testing to figure out what I want to teach you guys. So I put a lot of time into that, and I create these things. So I've created this already. If I just jump in really fast, I don't want you to see what the image is, but you can see how many layers are here. There's 20 layers. Well, actually, there's the title. So there's 20 layers here. There was like 50, but I really brought down the complexity of it because I can't make this into like an 8-hour tutorial, right? It's too much. We don't have enough time for that. So in my testing, I figured out that my keyframe, my camera pulls back here. I do want to add more depth in this version, versus the one that I did the testing on. I think on the testing, I pull back to around here. So negative 3396 in pixels, but I want to pull way back, like 3 times as far. So this is really going to change up how this looks. But that's what I want to do. And then when I'm here, I do want to see some type, right? This is where my title is going to be, and I'm just going to call it title. And I've actually got my typeface pulled up here. It's Big Caslon FB. Again, this is an Adobe font. So if you don't have it, you can just install it really easily off Adobe Typekit. I also like to work with my align tab here. So I'm going to align layers. Now, what's interesting is when you have a 3D layer, you can't align it for whatever reason. So unless they fix this in versions that you're watching, in past versions, you haven't been able to align it. So I always align in 2D. I center things up. It's just how I work. And then I make it 3D. So now it's 3-dimensional. I'm going to bring it really far forward in Z space, and I'm actually going to change it 2 views here so that I can see, here's my portrait, here's my type, and here is my camera way the heck over here, which, you know, looking at this now, I think this is too much space. So we'll go, let's go -6 maybe. I can deal with this because I want my portrait guy back here. He's going to be the very far back. Maybe I'll put some texture behind him, but there's going to be things lined up here in the middle ground. So actually, let's just go even closer. We'll do 5,000, negative 5,000. Like I said, in the original example, I think I was negative 3,000. So let's bring Tidal up here. I also want to hit AA for my camera. I'm going to turn on depth of field. And this is one that I already played with a little bit. I found that my aperture, I set my focus distance here. You can see this is just 620 pixels, and my aperture is 69. Just based on some testing. Since I am rebuilding this, there's always a chance I'm going to change that stuff. But there you go. Let's zoom in here. So you can see here is my focus distance. I just want to make sure that this guy is closer there. So there we go. So there's Tidal. And in my original example, I had Tidal pretty big, and I liked it like that. So we'll just put something like this. And using lights, it's going to eliminate how we see things, right? So right now we see this guy back here, but let's just go ahead and add a light to this guy. And I think for him, we're going to use a spotlight. And we're going to use fall off. We're going to use shadow darkness, diffusion. We're going to turn it up. Cast shadows, yes. And there you can see immediately that the guy, the man is lit up. The text is not. So I'll go back to 2 views here and just see where is this light at here. Let's just take a look at where this light is. Okay, there we go. So we're going to push this light. One thing I should mention is if I turn the light off, I don't like, I back this guy up. I don't like how this guy is cut off here on the side, but that's how the image was, right? I didn't have an entire image to work with. So he's already cut off. I think I did a really rough cutout job on this guy, actually, now that I think about it. I think I was going to show you guys that, and I didn't. So let's open up Photoshop really quickly here. And I'll go ahead and give you this Photoshop file. But when I brought this guy in, when I downloaded him off sphere.com, if I turn off the layer mask here, you're going to see this is what the original image looks like, right? So it's pretty cool. I like this texture that's going on around here. But I wanted to be able to see my own texture in the background. So I just did a really quick lasso. Actually, I think I did a quick selection, and I just went around and picked the guy out like this, and could have really feathered the edges, but I didn't because I knew that he was going to be against a textured background. I knew that he was going to be in focus just for a short amount of time and then be out of focus and somewhat blurry. So that rough cutout job works for this, right? You can see here he is again. It's a rough cutout, but because I'm using lights and things like that, we're going to mask some imperfections of this image. If I was doing this for a client, I would probably take the time. I know I would take the time to, spend 15 minutes intricately cutting him out, probably with a pen tool. That's my kind of go-to. And just to give it that extra subtle oomph, if that's even a word, but just to give it that little bit more detail that is just so subtle that a client, or actually the first time you saw this, you didn't notice that he's not a perfect cutout, but just having a little bit more detail in here would help. But for this example, I did want to show you that you can also get away with doing like quick selections in Photoshop because we're hiding things with lights and depth of field, and it can just speed up your workflow. I like to do things as quick as possible for the most part. In my testings, I spend a lot more time testing, building these projects out just to see what's going to work right and not work right. So yeah, I'll quit rambling now. So here's our light again. I think for now it's going to work, but I'm going to change this to man spotlight, just so I know, because I want this light to be just pretty much focused on this guy. Okay, so just to give you an idea, we could start on black. If I start on 0 here, I could actually keyframe the intensity here. So I could start it at 0. So this is like a real quick fade up, right? So we'll start it at 0, and we're at, I believe our composition is 24 frames a second. Yeah. So we could do like a quick 1 second fade up here. So there we are at 100% intensity, and he's kind of pushing back in space. And as he's pushing back in space, we're seeing other type and textures moving through space. So I don't want him to stay in focus, you know, for too long. So by here, let's say he's back out. And I don't know that the yellowish light is ideal. So let's just go with white, because I like him being in black. But again, you can see just by looking at this right here, if I turn off my depth of field, let's just turn it off. There's our dude. And if I turn the spotlight off, look how much nicer this spotlight makes him, right? And I just brought in a spotlight. I just made it almost 100%. It's not 100% white, but it's white colored. I just used the default position of the spotlight and the cone. You know, I have the cone angle turned down. If it's turned up, you can see kind of the edge there over in here that we don't want to see. But just adding a simple spotlight really brings some interesting life to this guy. You know, something like that looks really nice. So simple spotlight. And then we're controlling him fading in and fading out with this simple spotlight. So now let's go ahead and let's add in, maybe let's try adding in the background. I found that I liked this chalkboard texture like this in the background. So I'm going to bring it behind this guy, go back as far as I need to go, and let's just hit S for scale, and let's scale it up so it fills the frame here. You know, it's interesting because I can't even see the chalkboard because of this light that's in the scene. So if I turn the light off, there's our chalkboard again. So what I want to do now, just so I can see a little bit of that chalkboard, is I'm going to add another light. And I'm going to make this an ambient light. And this is just going to be my, I'll leave the word ambient in there, ambient fill. Again, I want to make it more on the white side. Definitely not 100% intensity, maybe something really low like 20%. And when I add this, it's going to affect how this guy is lit. So I'm going to have to take that into account. But, not enough so far. Something else I'm going to look at is with this guy, I'm going to hit AA. I want to make sure that he is not casting shadows. He is not casting shadows. Okay, so there we go. So there's cast shadows on, only off. So I just want to make sure he's not casting any shadows because I don't see a need for him to cast a shadow onto my background. What else could I do here? I could also just going to turn this ambient back on, hit AA. Just bring it in there a little bit. So that's at 53. Let's just try 55%. You know, I like to have things even. Now, I don't like that at all. Okay. Excuse me. So maybe what I need to do then is just turn off this ambient fill. Maybe I just make another light that's going to affect the chalkboard only. And if that's the case, I'm going to actually pull this chalkboard even further back here. And I'm going to add another light. And we'll make this, let's make this a point light. And we'll do inverse. Actually, we don't need any fall off here. Don't need to cast shadows either. And we do need to make sure that this light is behind my guy here. So the light is behind my guy, so it's not lighting my guy. Right there in front, it's lighting him. Behind him, he's not lighting him. And AA again, so we have no fall off. One thing to keep in mind too, I know I'm jumping around a lot here, but if I turn fall off for my man spotlight, if I say none, it is going to light up that chalkboard back there. You can see it's very subtle, but it's just enough fall off, so it's just reaching that guy and then not going beyond the guy and not lighting up this chalkboard back here. So let me go back to my point light here. I'm actually going to try and change it to a spotlight with a really wide angle. And let's see what that does. And let's turn up the intensity. Oh, it's facing the wrong way. That would help. And my guy is turned to lighten, so let's change him back to normal for now. I want this to be pretty subtle. And let's change it back to lighten again. I don't love it when it's lightened, so we'll leave it there. And let's just change spotlight back to point light just to see. I think I like point light better. Just less intensity. Change him back to lighten. Yeah, that's nice. So it's just a very subtle background texture that's there. I like it. Next, let's add another light for the title here. So the title is actually white text, we can see here, but it's black because there's no light for it. Okay, so ambient fill, I'm going to go ahead and bring up here to the top again. I'm going to turn it on. So I have a feeling we're going to need some ambient fill light. I can see now the chalkboard is way more visible, and it's not big enough. So we're going to scale it up. There we go. And let's turn ambient off, ambient on. You know what? Let's leave it off for now. In my test, I had to use an ambient light. I'll lock the chalkboard. We'll call this chalkboard light. Go ahead and lock that. The man will lock. I just like to lock these things in place. Now let's add another. Actually, let's just duplicate the man spotlight here. Duplicate it, and let's bring it up here, and we'll change this to Tidal light. And Tidal light, we're going to bring way back here so that we can see the title. And we're going to bring him, go to left side view here. And bring this guy down like so. Okay, so the light is not lighting up the title. And it's because I duplicated the light and we're down to an intensity of 0. That's why. So let's just bring the intensity back up. There we go. So we'll just go back up to 100. And you can see now, if I go back to one view here, maybe you saw from previous lessons, I prefer to use point lights just because, like, so you saw there, so there's my spotlight. See how it's just kind of cutting off the cone angle. I could expand the cone angle here easily, right, and cover this, but I like to work with less options, right? So it's less things to control, less like, with the spotlight, you've got the point of interest and the position. And with the point light, you only have a position. And just changing to point light lights this up. So that's going to work for me for right now. And we'll go ahead and leave inverse square clamped on. So there we go. It's starting to get there. So next thing let's bring in some of this. I've got 3 layers of texture here, okay? And these are just documents that I downloaded off the internet, Creative Commons. I was looking for like old writings, old typewriter writings, things like that. And I found things like this. So that's what we're going to use. So I don't want, the writing doesn't have to be anything that we have to necessarily be able to read. It's just texture that's in there, that's in this piece for us to add some visual interest. Okay, so let's find an area here. One thing that makes this more challenging is that there's like this, cursive writing. So like the G extends down to this line. So if I wanted to get, these lines, they have these letters that extend way down. And I like to make things easy, and I can't just do like a simple mask. So let's actually just use the pen tool. And let's zoom in here. I think we'll go with this line. There we go. Now what I want to do is I want this type to be white versus dark. So let's just go to channel invert. Yep. Let's also go to color correction black and white. There we go. And let's go to effect color correction levels. And what I want to happen here is I want the black to go away and the white to really pop. So to do that, we need to set this to screen. And we need to play with our levels here. I can never remember the right one. So we want to play with the black level here, okay? And probably the gray. It's okay if I see a little bit of this kind of chalk texture in there, that's okay. Because everything's going to be kind of blurry anyways, since we're going to have depth of field on, I think. So let's take this, let's make it 3-dimensional. And you can see my point of interest is way down here. So I'm gonna hit Y, and I'm just gonna drag this up. You don't have to do this. I just like things to be a little tidier. So if my point of interest is closer to my center point of the actual part of the layer I'm using, that's gonna be better for me. And let's zoom back here. And I just want this guy to be somewhere in the middle. I could go to my 2 views again. So I'm on the side view here. I'm gonna hit V for my selection tool. Oh, because I did push the portrait guy back. So at 0, this layer is actually right here. This would work actually, but we'll go ahead and just bring this guy. I don't know. I'm just looking at composition. Like, I guess you should understand, what makes a good composition and where things should kind of line up. I do teach that in Stylecraft. So there we go. So we're kind of flying past it. Now, as I start adding more lights and things like that, it's going to get a little bit more intensive for my computer here. But right now, we're still able to kind of scroll through it pretty quickly. And I'm not going to add a light just yet to this point. But let's go ahead and let's just duplicate this layer. Let's go back into our 1 view here. And let's solo this layer. And let's delete this mask. And let's just find a different part here that we could sample from. Maybe right here. There we go. And we'll zoom back out. And we're going to hit Y for our point of interest, or it's this tool right here. It's called pan behind, but it actually controls our point of interest as well. Our not our point, anchor point, sorry. 2 views again, and let's go ahead and bring this guy back here. Maybe up in here. And I could rename these layers to keep things a little tidier, but this is fine for now. I'm going to kind of keep the text in an interesting looking kind of block here. So this is my other line of text here. Here's this guy. Let's go ahead and bring in, let's actually duplicate this. And the reason I'm duplicating this is so I don't have to apply all these effects again. And I'm going to go ahead and bring in, I'm Alter Option, clicking, dragging, replacing. There we go. Ooh, that looks interesting already. But you can see here, instead of having to reapply invert, black and white levels, if I just copy and replace, it's easier. That's what the original looks like. So invert makes it white, black and white makes it truly white, and levels. Levels is going to be a little bit different. So if I really want to kind of boost the text up, the white, that's when I'm going to drag the right side of levels here. And it makes me think that maybe I should just take a look at this one and maybe intensify it a little bit. Yep. Same with this one. Cool. And let's just take a look. Let's solo this guy. Let's get rid of the mask. I do like this a lot, and that's interesting right there. So let's just do a simple mask like so. Awesome. And Y. There we go. 2 views, and I like to kind of just position elements around and then come back after my camera. I see, I'm flying through it. I see things, kind of reposition at that point. Maybe something like that. And let's duplicate this one again. And you can tell I really like to work in one view. That's cool right there. Just that. Boom. And Y. Again, you don't have to move the anchor point like this, but I like to. Now you can see here with the whites being drug, taking the slider to the left here, it's making this texture inside this image come out too much, and I don't want to see too much of that, so I have to be careful of that. I think that'll work. I also don't want to be too close to my title here, because by the time I get to this point, I just want to see the title. Again, you can see this one, there's too much texture happening here. So this is a tricky one, because if I get rid of this texture, it's getting rid of this as well. So we're going to have to see about this one. Let's just go ahead and keep this for now. something I could do here is I could feather quite a bit and kind of that helps a little bit, but you can see, what is this back here? Is that my chalkboard? Okay, so there's a layer right here. Okay, that's that. So let's feather this one. Let's bring this guy up. Okay, I want to bring this guy back in Z. That's looking kind of cool. Save. And I'd probably go ahead and turn my AA camera depth of field on. And let's hit U for position. We're going to make this guy ease in here. And the reason I'm doing this is because here I'm at, I'm 10 seconds into my animation, right? So if this is like a Tidal, I don't want to go take a full 10 seconds to get to this end Tidal, because then it leaves me like, what do we have here? So that's 12 seconds. So we're at 10. Let's actually make it even. Let's go right here to 10 seconds even. So if I'm fully pulled out with my camera at this point, that's 10 seconds. The end of my timeline here is 12, because my entire Tidal sequence here is 12 seconds. I don't want to just give it 2 real quick seconds to read, because we've been seeing so much information flying past us visually. We're looking at everything. We want to have some time to really settle on this title, whatever this title is. So I want to move my camera in quicker to this endpoint. So easy ease by default is going to stop, it's going to default to this value, which is what, 33%. Let's just take it. I think in my testing, I was around 60%. So that would probably work right in there. And I've got depth of field on. Now, again, we can see this text in here, and we don't want to see that text by the time we're to our title. By the time I get to my title, I just want to be focused on that title. So let me save here. I'm going to, okay, ambient is not turned on. There's the ambient. So we need some light to only affect our textures here. So what is the light? So title. Okay, so our title light is the one that's lighting up all of this back here. So what we need to do here is we need to go AA on our title light. We could change this back to spot, or we could just play around with our inverse square clamped here. I'm going to play around with radius. I'm going to bring it way down. You can see as I'm bringing it down, everything back here is going away. But now our title is going away. So we want to make sure our title's lit up there. It doesn't have to be perfectly dark back there. But I could also even add another light back here that, and let's try that. Let's just add, let's duplicate the title light, and let's call this negative light. And this one, we're obviously going to make it negative to pull light away, right? But to do that, we also need to be past our title here. So we don't want that to affect our title. So let's go past the title. So we're just on the other side of the title here, and you can see it's doing its job. So if I turn it off, there's the text, there's without the text. Now the trick here is to have it just enough, because like right here, I want to see the texture. So what I could do is actually set a keyframe here. So let's make this 0. So it's not affecting, it's not taking light away, but as it moves past this title, There it's pulling light away. Maybe I'm going to have it coincide with this guy back here. So let's maybe do something. Don't have to be perfect. That looks pretty cool. Save that. And let's go ahead and let's actually duplicate this guy again. And let's bring in our third texture, which is this guy. And let's just solo that. Let's take the mask. Let's delete the mask. And if I had AA and I say accept lights off, now I can fully see this. So even though we're only soloing this layer because lights are in our timeline, they still affect the layer that's soloed. So lights are always on. So let's save that. And for this one, I don't think we want to invert this one. Let's just turn off our effects here. This is a pretty big image. You know, it might be kind of cool to see. Just kind of looking at this. This is kind of an interesting block right here. And if I'm not totally sure on the part of the image I want to use, I'll do things like this where I'll just draw a rough mask. You know, obviously this isn't something I probably want. Because of this vertical line here, I don't love the way that looks, but if I decide to use this, I can always refine my mask. So if I invert this, okay, black and white, yeah, and then levels. So we let's actually reset the levels here. Need to get rid of that texture in there. And let's just try feathering a large amount here. And we're out of focus here. And my anchor point's way up there. So I definitely don't like those vertical lines there. That's not too bad. It might be usable. Depending on where we position everything here. No, I'm not a fan. I can already tell it's because I'm cutting too much off here. So let's solo that again. Take the mask. Do that here. And let's just look around inside this image here. So I think previously maybe I used this right here. So let's just take the pen tool. And maybe let's do that. Yeah. And we'll unsolo that. And we're going to take Y to move our anchor point up here. So maybe somewhere in here. Let's actually back it all the way up here because I want to see a little bit of text maybe in here. So we'll go 2 views here. Something like this. Yeah, so it's just on the edge here so that our first focus is on this guy. He's the important character in the show. And then we start to see some additional text come in here. I don't like the texture there, so we need to get rid of that texture. So let's play around here with this. And there are different ways you can remove, you know, portions of this texture. You could do Luma keying. I just find that levels, curves is a quicker way. Now you can see here, now the text all of a sudden looks way blown out compared to the image. So you have to keep things like that in mind. So I got the texture removed, but all of a sudden the white in the text was way too powerful compared to the rest of it. And I'm gonna just reposition some things here so elements aren't competing too much. It's also okay just to see portions of elements, right? We don't have to see the entire piece. This guy is really far over here. Doesn't need to be that far over. Maybe something in here. I'm actually going to move this guy over here. Now it's funny because now this texture we just brought in is so powerful, it's still there, even with the lights off. So let's make sure it's accepting lights. It's not accepting lights. There we go. That's why. So now you can see this guy's not even being lit up at all because he's not accepting lights and he's too far away from other lights. So let's add a light. We'll keep it a point light, and this will be called texture light. Actually, we'll call it word texture light. And we're going to say 1 just in case we need to add extras. And actually, I'm going to turn, they don't need to cast shadows. Now you can see I added that, and look what it did to the guy. Way too much light there. So let's take the intensity down. Let's find our texture. Here's our texture right here that's not being lit. There's our light. So with light, without. So you can see the light's affecting the man. It's also affecting the words here. So let's back it up just a little bit more here. Take them over to the right side. And then again, I'll turn the light off, on, just to see how he's affecting the entire composition. He's affecting the man, but it's not too much. But I may turn it down just a little bit more. Turn it off, on. Something I could play with again is the fall off. And then off, on, off, on. So now the light is only affecting this texture here. I think I'm going to duplicate this light, bring it back, and have it affect some of these other textures here. Not super happy with the placement of elements, so I'm redoing them a little bit here just for my eye, just to see what I like. That's looking a little bit better. I'm going to save that. And I want to add a couple more elements here, and those are right here under footage. I've got 2 footage layers here. This one is I believe it's a free texture from is it Premium Beat? It's all linked to it in the description below. It's a volumetric light with some dust moving through it, and you can go to their website and you can download this texture. I can't give it to you. I can't redistribute it, but I also have another one here, and this is Air Particles Windy, and this is from our friends at Action VFX. They've got amazing stuff. I'll link to their site as well if you want to pick up any of their product packs, but you're going to get this element here. They create just different footage for compositing in visual effects, and it's great for like visual effects shots, but it's also great for like motion graphics stuff like this. So let's bring both of these in, but we'll start with this subtle dust. And what this is going to do with the volumetric light is it puts a nice atmosphere into our piece here. Make it three-dimensional. And we're going to pull it forward in space. Let's just kind of figure out what's going on here. Let's go back to 2 views. Let's tell it to ignore the lights. There it is. And I need to also set it to screen. There we go. So it's a nice, you can see there's a really nice volumetric feel to it. And let's just see here. Yeah, that looks really nice. Now, the only thing that doesn't look nice is when it gets out here. And we're just going to solve that by scaling it up. Now, remember, I probably will add a light to this, and we won't see it by the time it hits this point, but just to be safe, I scaled it up. So let's save this. We're at full res here. Let's go ahead and preview this and see how it looks. Okay, so here's our playback. It's looking pretty good. There's a few things I want to change about it. For one, I don't love the atmospheric light here. It looks pretty nice. It does need to fade away, I believe. I want Tidal to be more on its own, but it looks nice. It adds a little bit of depth to it. Some of this type works, some of it doesn't. This line doesn't work. The rest of the stuff over here works. So let's move on. Let's wrap up this video and let's move on to part 2.